All right, welcome to the September 25th, 2024 meeting of the Redmond Planning Commission. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'll start with a roll call. Commissioner Aparna.
Present.
Commissioner Coleman.
Present.
Commissioner Copley.
Present.
Commissioner Gagne.
Present.
Commissioner Van Nyman.
Present.
Vice Chair Whittier.
Present.
And I am Chair Weston. Thank you to the following staff for being present tonight: Jeff Churchill, Becky Fry, Kim Dietz, and Chris Wyatt. I look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, and I look for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from September 11th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. So now it is time for us to hear public comment and items from the audience. I just want to remind everyone that RCW 4217A555 prohibits any public comment in support of or opposition to ballot propositions, measures, or candidates. All right, first up. We have one speaker tonight.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm David Morton, Redmond, 98053. Redmond is not regulating land use based on what industry the applicant is in. It's based on activities that the applicant proposes to conduct. As an example, let's say that a company whose business is aerospace engineering and manufacturing wants to lease or buy the parcel on which Watson Asphalt was previously located. This parcel is within the Southeast Redmond Industrial Zone and within CARA 1. Currently, no specific use permission is indicated in Table 2104-200 for manufacturing within the industrial zone. Presumably, the business wishing to locate its facility on the parcel would need to describe the facility's actual activity. The applicant might choose to simply say, "We build aircraft, spacecraft, and related parts." Would more detailed questions be asked, such as exactly what hazardous materials will be used and in what quantities? Would the applicant be willing to disclose all its proprietary manufacturing information, especially if such information revealed that the facility's operations would pose a high risk of contaminating Redmond's drinking water aquifer? We've been assured that really heavy industry is not allowed in Redmond. Where does that prohibition appear in Redmond's policies or code? Where is heavy industry defined in Redmond's code? If Redmond prohibits really heavy industry, that ought to be defined somewhere. The Department of Ecology maintains a mapping tool which shows the locations of contaminated toxic cleanup sites, including sites awaiting cleanup and sites where cleanup is complete. By comparing Ecology's map of toxics cleanup sites to Redmond's property viewer with the CARA layer selected, we can see 15 sites whose cleanup is not complete within Redmond's CARAs. The sites became contaminated with toxic chemicals from the following activities: 5 sites caused by maintenance and repair of vehicles and equipment. 4 sites caused by gasoline and diesel storage and fueling. 2 sites caused by unpermitted landfilling. 2 sites caused by dry cleaning. 1 site caused by road construction, and 1 site caused by recycling. The recycling activity would probably be the only activity classified as industrial or manufacturing. The other 14 non-industrial activities demonstrate that toxic contamination of groundwater can result from seemingly innocent activities like auto repair and refueling vehicles. In conclusion, clear definitions and stringent regulations are essential to protect Redmond's water supply and community health. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so next we are going to start our study session on the 2025 code package for Redmond 2050, bringing up Becky Fry and Kim Dietz.
Yeah, we actually have a whole team tonight. We have some joining online. So you don't have to listen to me talk for an hour and a half. We'll rotate through as they get to topics that they were the main editor. So I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Oops, sorry, and just to clarify, an hour or an hour and a half?
We will go as long as you want to go, but it is your first major in-depth study session. We're going to start adding things to your issues matrix, but we don't have responses to your issues matrix tonight, so I don't feel like it'll go.
I think we had 60 minutes on the agenda, so we'll see how we're doing and play it by ear on that.
So, just 1 second. There we go. Okay, so again, this is your first in-depth study session on the actual details of the proposal. We're going to be publishing the red lines of everything for this package within the next couple of days. We'll send that out to everyone when it gets published. That'll also be officially a part of your package for your next meeting. Okay. I don't know why it's not proceeding. There we go. So again, this is the first of two packages. It's focused on zoning and use changes. It is a really long presentation, so if you feel like you need a break in between topics, I'll let the chair make that call. Otherwise, we can just keep going through. And then just a reminder at the end, you've seen the timeline, but just a reminder at the end on the timeline. So this first package includes all of the zoning consolidations and wraps that all up, and the special districts and overlays, uses, all of the moving of the use consolidations and the new uses that are allowed. Starting at your next meeting, we'll introduce the second package. So again, a lot of this package is moving things around, but all of this particular package is all in Article 1. So it is essentially revamping the entire article. As you can see, there's a lot of color in here. There's only a couple places where there's no color, so that we're not touching it. So it's not far off the mark to say we're basically rewriting Article 1. And so what we'll get into for that first is what that looks like from a text standpoint, and then we'll have the introduction to some of the map updates. The actual official map adoption package will come to you in the next package because we need to walk through which parcels want to be in the new neighborhood mixed-use zone. So we'll conclude that conversation and pick those parcels in the first package, and then we'll bring the map amendment package with the second package. So just for clarity on what it will be tonight and what will not be tonight. Okay. So again, there's some slides in here that you've seen before. I'll skip through them fairly quickly, but for those who might be jumping in for the first time, we wanted to keep the continuity there. So as you remember, we're trying to simplify and reduce the number of pages in our code and not having a separate section for each zone. And so a lot of these have been grouped together, and so you'll see these nifty little tables with information instead of pages of text.
I don't know if it's possible to expand your screen. This font is very small.
I'm sorry?
I don't know if it's possible to expand your screen. The slide is taking up a really small amount. Maybe by closing chat?
This is as large as I go.
Okay. Okay. Commissioners, you're good? Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay, thank you. Sorry for the interruption. Thank you so much. That helps.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Okay. Okay, so the other thing that we're doing is as we're writing the chapters, again, from consistency standpoint, the same information in the same order and the same presentation style. There are some chapters that have unique information. There are a couple of times that we put in placeholders for right now. We just put reserved to come back in. But just to make sure that it's easier to read, it's easier if all the information is presented in the same way at the same time. So I'm going to turn it over to Lauren. She's joining us online to walk through the downtown.
Hi, thank you, Becky. Thank you, commissioners. So for downtown, we're making some significant changes in terms of how many zones there are. We're going from our 12 current zones to 3 zones. So in those changes, we're looking at modest increases to height and density, so a little bit more than what's currently permitted. And then also adding that transit-oriented developed area around our new light rail station and updating some of our design standards and our incentive program. I'm going to go to the next slide. So on those consolidating districts, we're going from that 12 districts. So you can see kind of where those districts are now currently, and then moving to those 3 districts. So it would be our downtown core, which you are all currently sitting in, our Redmond Town Center, and our downtown edge. So that buffer between residential and downtown. So each of these districts serve a different purpose. Town Center will still continue to be that main gathering and entertainment place with a broad mix of uses. Downtown core will still be the epicenter and the downtown life, the historic part of Redmond. And downtown edge is that transition area. So that mix of uses and more introduction to more residential uses in that edge area. And as with a lot of our centers, it's going to have that broad mixed use districts. So there's some images of town center and zooming in on that area. It's getting rid of those sub areas that are currently in town center, making it one consolidated district, and also slightly expanding its the current border zoning area. Our downtown core. This makes up a lot of what the area around City Hall is, a historic district, Old Town, and the area around Downtown Park. And our downtown edge, so once again, that area transitioning to more residential, actually on the edge of downtown, zoning district, the center. So some key definitions to keep in mind as we kind of talk about these development standards for downtown and the other districts is FAR, the floor area ratio. And base FAR is the max allowed FAR without the use of incentives. So it's not the minimum FAR that a building has to have, but it's just sort of the baseline of where we want to see building. And TOD is that transit-oriented development. So what's changing? Once again, we're bringing everything to us a new format and consolidating and simplifying information so it's all in one table. You see that modest increase in height, and you also see the incentive program will give you extra fee and extra FAR, extra floor area ratio within the TOD area, and a little bit less outside of the TOD area with incentives. So you get more height and more FAR if you're in that TOD area, that transit-oriented development area. So these are those updated standards, and we can, I don't know how we want to do this. If we want to pause here if people have questions, or we can move on to the next slide.
So I'm seeing questions. If you're up for taking them
Okay.
now, I think that would be great.
Yeah, that'd be great. I can take questions as we go.
And then people don't have to hold their thoughts too long. Commissioners?
Mm.
Commissioner Van Nyman.
Can you just explain geographically how the zones were determined to be where they are and why a person might think that there would be an entire ring of a buffer as opposed to there's only a few, there's a lot less of the downtown edge than than one might think. So how did you get to the map that we have?
So I can probably expand on this too on an issues matrix item, but it's largely it's consolidating the districts that we currently have and not necessarily splitting up the districts that we have now, or resulting into something getting downzoned.
I think putting this in an issues matrix is great, just for questions in general tonight, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's great. I think that will save a lot of time too.
Yeah. Another question, Commissioner Aparna.
I had two questions on this particular chart. One, the lot coverage is 100%. Does that mean that there are no required setbacks or something in these zones? That's one question. And then the second question was, I don't see the subterranean max depth, given the fact that the aquifers are underneath a good part of this. It would be nice to have that information in this table, because you've got height, but we don't have depth. So it would be nice to see what those look like. And because I want to understand the construction dewatering and all of the other concerns that we've had in the past, how that is being addressed.
Or if it's even relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good one for the issues matrix.
Yes, both need to be in the issue matrix.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioners? Commissioner Copley.
On the 100% lot cover area, I just want to ensure there's still a requirement for the open space area, and all of those things still apply. So when we're looking at these diagrams, when we're seeing like stacking of these 100% coverages of the lots, there's still going to be open space in those. Okay.
Correct. All of the requirements do apply and will impact, and you're never going to get 100% lot coverage in most cases because there are requirements that do impact that lot coverage. The diagram for the FAR was just an illustration to show that if you have one story, it's the same square footage as 2 stories from the FAR standpoint. It's just you shrink the footprint as you go taller, so.
And it's lot coverage and max height also comes into that? Like, that's an existing thing that FAR has to work around. Other commissioners? All right, I think we're ready to move on.
Okay. Apologize, I
Number
was
10.
issues matrix. Let me get back over the slide deck. Okay, there we go.
In addition to updating the downtown's development standards, we're in the process of updating the pedestrian systems map. So for starters, it's not going to be the pedestrian system, it's going to be the public realm standards, so similar to the changes and updates we were doing in Overlake. So looking at that back of the curb to the front of the building and updating the standards for that area. We're looking at updating the current map, accounting for existing conditions. So a lot of what's on the map was identifying railroad right-of-ways that would be turned into trails, and now they are trails. So clearly, updating that map to reflect current conditions, and then consolidating the Redmond Town Center pedestrian system map with the pedestrian map for the rest of downtown. So it's RAIN map. So that goes towards simplifying and consolidating a lot of the code. So this is the draft table for updating between that street type, public realm, and building design standards. So updating the format in the code, changing street type names. So now currently in the code, we have just type 1, type 2, type 3, etc. So consolidating some of those types and giving it a more user-friendly name. So I think we had somewhat like 4 or 5 landscape yard types in the current code. So making that one type and updating it to a more easily read table.
Any other questions on downtown before we move on?
Commissioner Coleman.
I just have a question on why we're calling it the public realm. I'm a bit confused. Does it mean pedestrianized first? Is it pedestrians first? Like, what's the reason? Realm sounds quite grandiose. So I was just wondering why we're using that term.
I'm sorry, you're asking for the definition of public realm, or?
We've sort of gone from, what was it, pedestrian system to public realm types, and public realm just confused me.
Okay, that's a really good question. So there's the pedestrian typology is the street types, just how much is pedestrian oriented versus street or car oriented. The public realm itself is the standards for the back of the curb to the front of the building. So it's that public realm space is how the building relates to the sidewalk, not necessarily how the sidewalk relates to the street or the lane width or the bicycles or anything. So the street topology and all of that is just curb to curb. So we're trying to split those apart because we're not going to really expand a lot of streets anymore. We're going to have a very limited set of street types, but we need more nuance in the curb to building. So that's why we're splitting them now for the first time. It is a little confusing, but we can also add in here an explanation of what the public realm and how they differ in the issues matrix, just for the record there.
That should work. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? No, I think we're good.
Okay. Right. All right, so for Marymore Village, it's going to continue to be a transitional area. When the Marymore Village was created as a local center a couple of years ago now, there was a promise made and put into code that we will continue to support manufacturing uses in this area. That was doubled down in the comp plan update. We want to continue to support those uses in this area, but allow it to transition over time. And that will be taking place in the code as well as in the plan updates. Part of that is with the preservation of what is currently MDD4. We're renaming it Marymore Manufacturing because we're getting rid of all design district references. But there's going to be some only minor changes in there just to have a consistency across the board for that. And so that'll happen. We have made some adjustments to the zoning districts. Obviously, we went from 5 to 3 from the design district standpoint, but we've also adjusted the layout of where they go to get Marymore Core District is now significantly larger than the MDD1, which was just the Sound Transit parcel and the light rail parcel, and just right there and across the street from the light rail station also made sense to have that core. So we've adjusted some of the zone layout as well. And we are being really careful to make sure that there is a mix of services. One of the things that was done in the original creation of the zone was a limitation on some types of commercial activity. Again, that was intended to preserve the manufacturing and not put pressure on it to go to stores and that type of thing. However, as you start to add more housing in there, you need to make sure you have adequate commercial and all sorts of other services too. So there's been some changes in the use and mixture of uses in there to support that. And also, we've talked a lot about Marymore being an inclusive neighborhood and an arts and cultural district and integrating the tribal connection into the placemaking of the code. So all of that goes into Marymore Village. That being said, what you'll see from a standard standpoint isn't going to change a lot, with the exception of we now have, through the incentive program, the ability to go up to 12 stories. So it is potentially going higher, but the actual character of the area is still intended to be a very villagey, interactive pedestrian activation zone throughout the entire core. What that looks like from here, just to be a little bit more clear in the mapping, is the actual 5 districts to 3. Also, the implementation of transit-oriented development focus area. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. The other thing to point out, though, too, is in the Marymore Center, it's not just the Marymore zones. And so there are other zones in there, and the general commercial strip that's between the trail and Redmond Way is also getting rezoned. That is going to urban mixed use and corridor mixed use. So just keep that in mind. It'll have the same standards as throughout the entire city where those zonings are applied. However, if you are in the TOD focused area in the center, you can take advantage of the Mary Moore TOD bonuses. So there's a little bit of overlay there as well. So one of the things that we've done at Mary Moore is similar to what we did in Overlake. It had very low building heights without incentives, and it gave a little bit of give with incentives. Like we did in Overlake, where we set the new bar for what you can do without incentives at what you could do with incentives today, we've taken that same approach with Mary Moore. So what you can get with incentives today will be the new what you can do without. And then we're going to be revamping the incentive program and allowing it to go up. You may recall, or you may not, lost in the details of the EIS, but if a property owner in Marymore would like to go above 6 stories, they will have to do their own individualized SEPA and look at impacts, because we did not assign that growth and it wasn't in the modeling. But if they choose to do that, they could go through the same processes they go through today and do an individualized project level SEPA review. So, with that being said, the FAR has just been adjusted to take account of that adjustment of what they could do. The impervious surface and lot coverage and stormwater infiltration, that's all the same as today. Obviously, we went from 5 to 3, so there's some slight nuance in that. There's a couple of other revisions that you'll see. There's some step-back revisions right now. They're kind of a little bit complicated. We're going to try to simplify the step-back revisions. Also, the height overlay area requires 100 feet back from the park. You can only go to 3 stories. And so we're minimizing that down to only 40 feet is in the draft proposal. And letting that be less of a transition zone. Initially, there was a lot of concern about not having Marymore development impact the park users. And so in the EAS, we did shadow studies and building studies, and we looked at the tree coverages and the building heights. So not as much of an issue, and so we're reducing that down to 40 feet. A couple of other changes, we've been working with the property owners in Marymore, and we might have some street adjustments on the southern part where you see the lower star. On the upper quadrant, there is some property owner consolidation efforts underway and master planning of potentially more than one lot all at once. And so they are proposing some realignment and focusing more on pedestrians and potentially having pedestrian street types that are open to fire trucks and garbage trucks and getting in and out of parking garages, but are otherwise pedestrian streets. And so that would be new to Marymore, and so we'd be adding a 4th street type to Marymore. And so there's a couple of adjustments that you'll see from a roadway standpoint. Okay. And then I will turn it over to Audra and Lauren to walk through the
Actually, would it be possible to do questions on this section, or would you like to wait till?
Yeah, let's do it by section.
Lovely. You're ready?
Go for it.
Okay, Commissioner Copley.
Thank you. Since everything in the current MDD zone is becoming either Marymore Core or Edge, will current manufacturing uses be supported or grandfathered in once the zoning changes? And if so, will those exceptions be tied to those users or the uses?
So the uses will still be allowed. We are not restricting manufacturing in those areas. If they want to stay, they can stay. That was a promise that we made for years, and so that was continued on in this code update.
And are those days the uses or users?
The uses. So
Thank
it
you.
can transition to a different business if need be. That's entirely up to the property owner at that point. The intention is to have this be a little bit more of a gritty area in that sense than some of the others because, and especially because there's a hope that this becomes a real art and cultural district, and the manufacturing and selling of art is a good piece and fit for that. So obviously other types of manufacturing are in there too. There's just been some turnover recently with some really interesting new businesses coming in. Some larger businesses have left and been replaced by many, many, many small, really creative businesses. So that's a really good indication of the fact that Marymore is a lively place that people want to be. And so we want to make sure that we're not limiting the uses in there. We're just managing the look and feel of the neighborhood more than the uses, if that makes sense.
Commissioner Parna.
This might be a really stupid question. Maybe I don't know how
Oops,
to.
microphone.
This might be a really stupid question because I might not be reading the map correctly, but the whole district, the Marymore district, seems to abut quite close to the transit station. So why is this not part of the, like, do remnants of the TOD kind of stick to this, or why has this not been touched as potentially, at least the edges? Or maybe I'm reading the map wrong. That's, I don't know.
Sorry, can you specify which transit station?
So it's the final transit station towards beyond the town center area, right? Isn't there one there?
So the town center light rail station is in downtown.
Right.
The Marymore Village light rail station is in Marymore Village.
Right.
Correct.
So that's the part which I'm just trying to understand, is there the rationale behind not having any TOD in this area?
Almost all of this will be a TOD.
Okay, but it's not called TOD.
No, we don't have any zone called TOD. We do have a TOD focus area.
Okay.
And we have a slide a little bit later with a more clear definition of where that map is, but it's all the crosshatched area in here.
Okay.
We did not apply it to the manufacturing, again, because we were trying to protect the manufacturing and not have it be super pressured to redevelopment. And so we just didn't do the TOD overlay there. But otherwise, everything in crosshatch here will be a TOD, and it'll get the TOD incentives.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Thank you.
Other commissioners?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
So as you may know, we started community engagement on these zones several months ago. We had some really lively workshops in June that helped really get some input that helped develop it. So I wanted to remind everybody, and there's a picture of one of the workshops in there. Lauren, do you want to?
I'll start a discussion on mixed use zones. So you've noticed this theme. We're simplifying our zones. We're simplifying our standards. Some of these zones are being used to help accommodate some of that additional growth that we're seeing in Redmond, that we've studied in Redmond. It's allowing that residential and non-residential areas, especially along our corridors and outside of our centers, allowing housing along with our big box retail stores, and adding commercial uses into some of our residential areas. So these mixed use zones are all of our mixed zones for housing and for commercial use outside of our centers. So previously our zoning limited mixed use or labeled mixed use zones in our code. So it's expanding that mixed use throughout the city, especially outside of our centers. So replacing neighborhood commercial, general commercial, regional retail, which is where you see those big box stores, in several of the previous design districts. I think we can go to the next slide. So our urban mixed use, that formerly that regional retail, that's where our big box stores are in the city. So I know this group, we've especially discussed how how those big box stores are really valuable to both our residents and people outside of Redmond. And so looking at, how these sites can transform and accommodate other uses in addition to big box retail. So not necessarily getting rid of that or reducing it, but looking at how do we add housing, how do we create add other services, and create a kind of a vibrant mixed use area around our big box retail. So these are sort of some examples that we've seen in other cities of what this kind of urban retail stores look like, and maybe what it could eventually look like in the city of Redmond, and kind of zooming in on where this is located in the city. Yeah, creating that more vibrant, walkable, robust area around our big box retail. Looking at adding that mid-rise podium, adding a little building height, a little FAR, and replacing that regional retail with a more of a mixed-use area. Another one of our, did we want to stop and pause for questions on urban mixed use and then go on the calendar?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Oh, did we want to pause for any questions for urban mixed use? Or move on to
Sure,
corridor?
that would actually be great. Does anyone
Okay.
have any questions or comments here? Commissioner Coleman. Oh, no, sorry. You do have a question. Go for it.
Do we have any businesses that have already decided and committed to moving in the way that you sort of described or showing? Just curious.
We have not heard from anybody specifically in a big box format that would like to go to an urban format yet. We've been reaching out to those property owners. It's kind of hard to get to the right person at the corporate level. We do have some property owners in that zone who have been talking to us, actually several of them, and I do know of a couple of cases where they're exploring their options and they just don't know what they're doing. In Marymore, there is a project that will be coming in after the rezoning to urban mixed use.
Vice Chair Wood here.
There is an intent to maintain these big box stores. If that intention does not come to fruition and we lose big box stores, is there a plan or flexibility to perhaps rejigger the zoning after the fact, or will we just live with that?
There's definitely the ability to watch what's happening and take a look and see if things are moving away that we don't want to move away and make some adjustments. Our code actively goes through that process of reviewing with staff. Hey, what have you seen? Are there any adjustments that we need to make? And we do intend to do that, especially since we're making so many huge changes that we do know that we'll have to keep an eye on, are we getting what we thought we were going to get out of the way we wrote the code? But one of the things that we do have in the draft for this is a no net loss of commercial space. So even if the big box itself goes away, it might be replaced by 2 stores or 3 stores, but we're trying to make sure that the commercial services that are extremely important to our community that happen to be in that area don't get lost.
Commissioner Aparna.
Becky, I just had a question about, actually, Lauren, I don't know who, but the big box stores, there's a lot of dependence on parking. So is there any way, if we don't want to lose the big box stores, but want to encourage development, is there some kind of regulation coming up where we say that the surface parking lots are not what, we could have multi-tiered parking lots, because I can't go to Target and walk back home. I just can't.
Right.
Right? Or Home Depot. Oh my God, Home Depot. Right? So I still want to go to Home Depot. I still need my car. So are these regulations dealing with parking differently so that we can accommodate these new mixed uses?
Lauren, did you want to jump in on that, or?
I mean, in the current code, we don't have anything explicit right now on that. But I think that is the vision for as we do the development standards for this as well, in that it's looking at using the space more efficiently for these parcels in this area, in adding those other uses.
I think one of the things we have talked about is limiting surface parking in general. We've had some conversations about some of the urban format big box are really focused on delivery. And so making sure that we have loading docks and delivery trucks and truck rentals, right? So if you don't go there in your vehicle, you can pick up your thing, drop it off and come back. And so making sure that those uses and spaces are properly adequately planned, and including the circulation of all of that in the midst of a highly pedestrian activated zone. And so we've had some conversations along those lines from that perspective. But we can continue to have those conversations as we look through the drafts and see if there's anything else we need to adjust.
Commissioner Coleman.
When you talking about big box stores, I was assuming they'd be like mini versions of a Target, or mini versions, like for example in the UK there are big grocery stores like Sainsbury's which are outside of town, and there's small Sainsbury's stores, or there's a Tesco's which is similar, which is Tesco Metro. So if you're in a city, the expectation is you're walking there, you're picking stuff up you can walk home with, and it's in the centre. So my assumption was it would be more focused on people living in the area who are walking in there and walking home versus driving there and parking, because you can pretty much go somewhere else to do that. Is that the intent or not the intent? You're expecting everybody to do the same as they could do in these stores as they would do in big box stores? That's my question.
So this actually, if I could ever jump in, so this actually, my comment might answer that. So when we first saw this a year ago, I think the intent was much more what you're describing, where it's like you have an urban, much smaller footprint version of a big box store with then a fraction of the shopping options. And I think I really like this evolution where we're acknowledging that like those big box stores are there and they're popular because they're serving a real need in the region. And so trying to accommodate the growth, but also recognize that we're not trying to get rid of this particular use in this particular spot because it is serving a regional need. So I actually really appreciate that evolution. That was my main comment on this system, on this section, is that it's really clear to me that there's been a lot of community comment that's come in and shaped it, because it's similar, but the nuance is completely different, and I like that. But I think if you have additional comments on taking a different direction, we can definitely get that into the matrix. And Vice Chair Woodyer.
Yeah, just for my own clarity. So as we think about this evolution, I think I'm hearing you say that the intent is really to serve a smaller footprint within the community versus the broader community. Are we saying that, or are we?
No, originally, when we first saw this a year ago, I think that was the intent.
Right.
And then I think there was a lot of feedback that actually, like, people like going to Home Depot.
And you have people from Bellevue coming to Home Depot.
Right, or Seattle coming to Target or whatever, because it's like the closest one they can get to.
The parking issues, the dock issues, all of those things, and the types of commercial businesses becomes a big factor.
Right. And the parking idea that, like, we don't necessarily, to Commissioner Aparna's point, want those huge surface lots. So then what other solutions do we have? Commissioner, is this a new item or finishing up? Okay, finish up on this one maybe.
So I'm still confused. So I'll just give you an example. Like, we have a Target. You can drive there and park and go around Target. If we have, as an example, so you have a smaller Target store, like you can see in other cities, it's smaller for people who are close by. So my question is, what's our expectation for these footfall and usage-wise? Have we done any analysis that says, hey, say 80% of people who are going to go into these stores for the particular use, because I'm assuming that most retail companies are going to be looking at that, are going to be next door, around the corner, a couple of streets away, versus driving from Bellevue or driving from outside Redmond. I'm just confused. It seems to me that seems a little backward if we're going to put smaller stores in these places and expect the same people going there. I find that odd, personally.
So hopefully I can rephrase this in a way that makes a little bit more sense, is we don't necessarily need a 100,000 square foot store, but we're not going to force them to go down to a 10,000 square foot format. Like I know that there's an urban Target in Portland that you walk in and it's basically like a CVS, right? I mean, it's really super limited. The community was extremely clear, as Chair Weston mentioned, about they need their Target to still be Target, and to not have a really limited thing. There is a super regional draw because our Target and our other big box stores are bigger than the other versions of them in this area. So our intention is to make sure that we can keep that same size if they want to, if they can readjust it, they can, but redo the building so that it's not a sprawling one-story building with a huge parking lot. So stack it up. Add some other things in the building, keep it moving forward, but you don't necessarily have to shrink it down and become a pharmacy.
Commissioner, or did that answer?
I still find it odd, but okay.
Okay. We'll keep circling back. So, Commissioner Copley.
Love this idea. I've seen this work in Ballard with the Target there, right? I guess my question here as I'm looking at these photos is when I actually go to places like this, I see bikes, I see a lot of scooters, and I see them kind of either put exactly where they were designed to be put or strewn everywhere. So are there any, have there been any considerations to where we might have multimodal, transportation storage areas for people to get there via bike or some other way than a car? First thing. And then second was, have we explored any of these, like let's say Costco at the base of multifamily and like just studied how that went when those were first rolled out? So sorry, 2 questions.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the second one.
The second one was just, have we looked at examples of where we've put big boxes at the base of like a multifamily building and seen how things went to get some instruction?
We did actually, I think Kim sent it to us not that long ago. There's a Costco proposed in California that has multifamily with it. So we have been getting some examples and gathering up those. We haven't done what you would say an economic study level of study, but we have been gathering examples and best practices and pulling those things together for staff to look at.
And adding to what Becky was describing, we've been looking at this form of business and how it's been changing over time. So over the past, say, 10 or 15 years, we've been observing businesses wanting to have smaller businesses within. So even though you might see a large single-story Target or Supercenter or something like that, oftentimes what that base business is doing is leasing out, subleasing part of its footprint inside. And so that gives an opportunity to then more easily stack the different uses and include more like office and residential as part of the whole makeup. And what we're learning through these studies is that the larger footprint is not as desirable by the company anymore. Like they want to shrink their footprint as well.
I'm sorry.
Oh, and just the first part on multimodal transportation, has there been any consideration given to where bikes and scooters and other things might go?
And all of this is getting captured in the matrix, so we will come review all the answers when we're back.
Yeah, I don't have
October.
an answer on that one, but I did add it to the matrix.
Great. Commissioner Aparna.
I just wanted to circle back to Commissioner Adams' question. So given the fact that it's just off 520, the location of those stores are just perfect in terms of not having heavy trucks crisscrossing the city. And the CVS or the smaller grocery stores, I am hoping it's captured in the corridor mixed use and the neighborhood commercial, which takes up the really smaller footprints of grocery stores and day-to-day things. Right now, if you look at it, we had Lowe's in Bellevue, it closed. You've got Home Depot in Bellevue. So we would start going outside of the city to shop for those things that are there in those current big box stores. I don't know why we would give up that revenue right now. So I think this proposal is great if we can kind of figure out what happens to the surface parking lot. It's also a little further out to go on a scooter. Like, I wouldn't be able to go on a scooter from my home to that place and buy a faucet, for instance. It's not very likely because it's on one edge of the city. So from a location standpoint, it's ideally suited for what it's doing right now. At least that's my 2 penny word. So thank you.
Other comments? Commissioner Gagne.
I have a question about how feedback is captured, because Chairperson Weston seemed really excited about how this had changed, right? The first permutation of what this was, and then based on community feedback. I don't have the benefit of being here long enough to know exactly how it changed, but I would be very excited to understand the community feedback. And is there a place where it's archived, or as commissioners that we can understand what went into those changes and to see for ourselves, right, as representatives, what the feedback was? I think that would be very insightful.
We have captured that in a number of different ways, but when we come back, we can provide another snapshot of these are the things that we did from a community engagement standpoint and what evolved from that and what it looks like now. So that is something we can definitely provide.
I have, sorry, kind of two-part, and it's jumping ahead. Later, there was talk about how letters and postcards were sent out to communities, I think, that were on the corridor's edge. And so I also wondered if there was information that we can have as commissioners to understand what the feedback was from those postcards and letters that were sent out.
Sure. We can capture that all. Okay. Anything else on?
All right, this was a fruitful topic, but I think we're ready to move on.
So the other mixed use area, I think you went too far. We need to talk about corridor.
Sorry. All right. Where did we leave off?
Is a smaller scale than the urban mixed use is the portal. So this is formerly neighborhood commercial and general commercial districts. These were all commercial districts previously. And they're just sort of being grouped together, and they can accommodate, modest growth and an increase in density along our corridors. So the building height is between 45 and 65 feet, and then between FAR 2 to 3 with a broad mix. And once again, we're all previous commercial districts that are now being consolidated to that corridor mixed use zone. Are there any questions in a corridor mixed use zone?
There we go. Commissioner Aparna, please.
I was just curious if we could get some more information on how many. I remember having this discussion a long time ago about NC1 and NC2, and there were very limited parcels in the city. So the GC and the NWDD, so I'm just trying to understand how much of the city's area is being released to the corridor mixed use because I see the map and it's very tiny, and it doesn't even seem like, in my head, corridor is central, but it doesn't even seem like there's only 1 or 2 spots which seem central. Everything seems to be a little bit on the edges. So just trying to understand, I don't know if it's a nomenclature or it's just the zoning, because in my head, what Adam was talking about earlier about, the tiny Target or the tiny whatever grocery store, it would be on the corridor along, let's say, 148th, where I am in the Grasslawn neighborhood, and I can walk to 148th. It's got wonderful trails and things to walk on. I can go there for a much bigger shopping spree if I want to. I can walk there. And 148th I thought was a corridor. So I'm not sure where we're headed with this. And there was only one policy in corridor in the plans, in the policy section. So I need a little more, any clarity on this would be great. Thank you.
I would like to actually piggyback on that because I had a very similar comment. So 148th was popping for me too. Another place in Grasslawn that really pops is that 85th corridor. Another place that really pops is there's the crossroads of 140th and Old Redmond Road have come up a few times in my hearing. Especially with the recent changes that Kirkland's considering and Bellevue's considering further down each of those roads. And so I'm just curious if there are criteria that would be used to either say this corridor mixed use should exist or shouldn't exist. Is there how far we are from a grocery store? Is there a minimum number of cars per hour or cars per day metric? So I would love a little bit more information about why sites are disqualified if they're not on this map.
Lauren, I can jump in and handle that if you'd like, or you can.
Sure, but I also, I didn't know if we wanted to limit the discussion for an hour or not, and we could just address it in the issue matrix.
Yeah. I definitely am going to be adding it. I've already got it in the issues matrix.
Okay.
I think from a simplicity standpoint, though, we weren't creating any new places to zone 2 corridor mixed use as a part of the preferred alternative. But we have made it so that it could be rezoned 2 corridor mixed use if community would like to see it that way. And so the zones that were shown as what was going to, there we go. NC1 General Commercial and Northwest Design District were the only ones there, and we just took the exact places where they occurred and then transitioned them to mixed use. So we anticipate that there will be movement over zoning districts over the future, and it's not to where it's set in stone that this is the only thing.
So one quick follow-up question on that. When you say when the community wants or requests it, is that individual property owners, or is that a neighborhood saying this would be or a group of people?
It could be
saying
either
this would be
or.
ideal?
An individual property owner can come in and do a rezoning request, just a standard application rezoning. Or we're going to be going through and updating all the neighborhood plans, and a part of the neighborhood planning process, there could be some zoning changes identified through that process.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Commissioner Aparna.
Just to follow up on that, so when the individual property owners apply for rezoning, it's not part of the docket process, right? Or is it?
It depends on if they're changing a land use category.
Okay.
So if they're going from one land use category to another, that it does have to go through an annual docket, it is a comprehensive plan with rezoning request. One of the things that we did with the neighborhood mixed-use zone to make that not have to happen is it is on the same land use classification as neighborhood residential and neighborhood multifamily. So if you wanted to go from either of those 2 zones to neighborhood mixed use, you are not needing to go through the annual docket comp plan, right?
Awesome, thank you. Because that's a process.
Yeah. For sure. Other commissioners? Commissioner Van Nymen.
I would just point out that in looking at that map, that to me, those are obvious choices now. I understand why weren't other choices made, but the one up in the very northeast corner there, that's right up by my house, and that's PCC. So it's already ripe for, transition.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. I think Audra is up.
Yes, thank you, Becky. Good evening, Commissioner. So this is our smallest mixed use, small scale mixed use. It's a new zone that we're implementing, and we're trying to implement this concept of complete neighborhoods, bringing the small commercial space to our residential areas. And this is also based on all the analysis that we did last year with the complete neighborhoods analysis that's online and in our story map. So you can go and look at it and see how these came about. So the building types that we're looking at are, of course, smaller scale, maybe home businesses, maybe using the same structure but having some commercial space in there, micro retail. And we are also trying to have this mixed use fit into the neighborhood. So we are keeping the height at 38 feet, which is the same as the neighborhood residential. And as I was saying, it's always a smaller commercial space. Can we go to the next slide? So this is how we came up. The map is still not finalized because we're still refining the parcels that are going to be rezoned to this neighborhood mixed use. But we started with this map. We chose 70 parcels based on multiple factors like access to services, critical areas, based, of course, in the complete neighborhoods analysis that I mentioned, and also having walkability, stuff like that. And some of these sites were also proposed by the community. So that's how we came. This is like the big number of parcels that we had. Then can we go to the next slide real quick? Then we reached out to the owners. We sent them postcards to invite them to our mixed use workshop in June. Some of them came. Then we also sent them specific letters, targeted letters, so they could come and talk to us. And we went from 70 parcels to that we reached out. 33 responded, and from those 33, 20 were interested in having this neighborhood mixed use. So we're still refining the map, but this is basically a little bit of how it might look. Some of the parcels are really small. You cannot really see them at this scale, but we are still working on the parcels. And do I have anything else on neighborhood mixed use? I don't know if you want to stop here and have some questions or comments.
All right, there's a lot of interest here. Commissioner Gagne.
I don't know what micro retail is. Is that like a food truck? Is that a home business turned into a bookstore out of your house? Or is there a definition for what micro retail is?
I don't think we have a definition in our glossary, but it's basically something very small scale. Could be like an ice cream shop, churro shop. I mean, that's very, very small.
I think I do have it.
You
It's
do?
like 600
Great.
square feet.
And that would be great for the issues matrix if we don't want to dig it out right now.
It's actually an easy definition. It's less than 5 employees, so it could be, it can flex, but it's mainly based on the number of employees. Yeah.
Commissioner Aparna.
So, 2 questions. The number of properties identified, I'm hoping they're across all the neighborhoods, not just clustered around one, which would be really like one happy neighborhood, but then the rest of us, And the second, so basically I know the map will come, but I'm just hoping that we're keeping an eye on the clustering. And the second part is, I know there are criteria, but it would be nice to understand what criteria were used in detail for identifying these 17 parcels. In the event that somebody else comes up with this and says, hey, I have a parcel which kind of meets this, we want to know against what framework to weigh that. So it would be nice to get a little more detail on this. Thank you.
Commissioner Coleman.
I was just a little confused with the numbers because I saw 17 here. I think we were talking about 70 down to 33. I was just curious where the 17 came in. So did I miss that somehow?
So it went from 70 that we reached out, 33 came back to us, responded. And from those 33, 17 are interested in having this neighborhood mixed use zone.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, maybe I
It's
missed
actually,
that.
it's actually 18. I got an email like a few hours back, so.
So,
So that's an evolving number, it sounds like.
Yes, we're still talking to the owners, and also we might not get the 18 because we're still talking to the owners and seeing if their parcels are viable, because some of them might have some issues. I know we had 2 parcels in a cul-de-sac that has an HOA. So those are probably not going to work because we need all the owners in that cul-de-sac. So when we had these conversations with the owners, a lot of little things came up that we might have been aware of only by looking at the map, right, and deciding on this. They were saying there's like a blind curve, so it won't be a perfect space to walk or just to come into the neighborhood. So stuff like that was really, it's very valuable to have those conversations one-on-one. And we also, yes, we would like to have them in all neighborhoods, but we are trying to make this a success. So we really want the owners to want to do this, because we could rezone everywhere, but if it might not happen. So we're trying to be like very specific on the parcels for the owners that want to have it.
Commissioner Coleman.
Yeah, this was an extremely exciting topic that came up in the Redmond 2050 prior to us coming here. My follow-up question was, and I think it's probably aligned a little bit with your question about how these things were chosen. Are most of them sort of what would be kind of commercial, or do you have anything that's actually just someone's residential? Just interested, is there any kind of residential properties where people have said, oh, please come and take my house? Or is it more like, smaller sort of commercial property areas?
These are all in neighborhood residential zone, as you can see by the map. So they're all residential parcels right now. So yes, but some of them, for example, in the recently annexed area, some of those parcels are completely vacant right now.
All right, thank you for that.
Thank
Other
you.
Commissioners, Commissioner Copley.
There are 2 circles, and I'm curious why those circles are on the map. And I feel like there's lots of areas that would be potential opportunities, but why did you guys circle those?
Could you go a slide back, Becky? Or whoever is driving.
Okay.
Yes, those are also based on the complete neighborhoods analysis. So that's why those circles were there.
So you might recall that we spent a significant number of months talking to the community about the gaps. And Odor did an evaluation of which neighborhoods are just sorely lacking access to pretty much anything. But then we did this geographic analysis and, feedback from the community about specific places that they would look to transition, they still identify gaps. And so those circles are the additional gaps that just didn't have a solution yet identified. And so we had specifically targeted conversations with the community about, okay, these are places here that we still need ideas. Please come to us if you have a property in that area that you think would be a good fit, and come up and suggest something if you'd like to have us go knock on doors. So those circles are general. We don't have a specific location in mind. We need community feedback about how to fill that gap. Okay. I believe this is the last slide for the mixed-use piece. It's just all the numbers in play. You can see that there's some nuances here but it is at an hour. I just wanted to check in with the chair to see if you want to keep going or.
So just give me a sense, just backing out, how far do you think we are versus how much to finish the material?
We've only got a couple more slides on zoning, but we have all of the slides, 20-some odd slides for uses. So
Okay.
It really depends on if you just want to keep plowing through for another little bit or if you want to go ahead and call it and continue the conversation at your next meeting. You're going to have several study sessions for a couple months.
Right. So commissioners, do you want to finish zoning? Okay, everyone likes finishing zoning, and then we'll pause for tonight, and then we can move on next time when we come back. Will that work?
That'd be great.
Great.
Just to quickly get through this, so you have a chance to digest this, but there's 2 things I did want to point out. One of the proposals for neighborhood mixed use is you have your base FAR without incentives. If you wanted to do a commercial only, you could just get the base. If you're doing mixed use and you have housing in there, then you could potentially earn more with the incentive program. So that helps keep the commercial at a really small scale if it is just a commercial transition. But if it then goes to mixed use and has housing in it, it allows a little bit more flexibility. And then you can also see the no net loss is in there as well. So it's just another way, again, of trying to maintain the commercial viability of that area. A couple of other zoning changes. I believe this has been in another slide deck, so I won't spend too much time on it. But again, we're moving a few other things around and creating this new Chapter 2115, which is conservation and recreation zones. So that is happening. Then what you will also see is a lot of strike-throughs in the red line package that are coming out. And in particular, you'll see 2108. We're just going to do a repeal and replace on that one because basically we're rewriting the whole chapter. But in 2114, where we're getting rid of all the other design districts too, there's going to be massive strike-throughs. So what we may also do is just repeal and replace chunks of it. But then we're also getting rid of the use tables, even within the zones that are staying. So there's going to be a lot of just red lines in that. But the other changes are more just organizational in play. And then Audra, I don't know if you want to highlight your work here on the zoning map real quick.
Yeah, this is so obviously this map doesn't have the neighborhood mixed use yet because this is still, we're still studying those parcels, but this is basically the consolidated zoning map that we will be adopting in spring. So here you see how we went from 50 zones to just 20, and this is like the result.
And then again, at your next meeting, we'll have a much deeper dive actually into the neighborhood mixed use. And actually in that packet, what we can do is give a direct link into the interactive map that Audra created that you can click on and see the today's zoning and the future zoning proposal. And this another link into the story map that walks through that zoning consolidation, just so that all of those resources for folks who are interested in learning more about what this all means. Also, we are updating all of the website stuff, so I've been frantically working away on getting all those updated. So we'll have some additional online resources to share at your next meeting too, as we dive deeper into the actual red lines and the map adjustments. So.
Are you open to questions on this section, or would you?
Sure.
Okay, Commissioner Van Nymen.
I would just suggest you make your legend bigger.
This, this map image here is a screenshot just for the PowerPoint, but it's actually intended to be the large format printout map. So in future conversations, we'll actually have easier to digest nuggets, especially the neighborhood, just because those parcels are so small. Just created a bunch of inset maps that you zooms in so you can see a little bit easier.
I'm hearing broad consensus. Thank you.
That is it for zoning. Did you want to go ahead and stop today?
I think
Sorry.
so for tonight. People seem like they've done a good job participating now, and then we're going to keep them in it for next week.
So again, we're going to be publishing the draft red lines here over the next couple of days. We're going to start releasing chapters. As they go live, we'll let you know too, so you can start your early preview and not wait till your packet to see them.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. So that concludes this conversation for today, and we can move on to the next one.
All right. Thank you so much. This was great. Oh, one more question from Commissioner Aparna.
Not a question, I just wanted to comment. This is superbly exciting. The neighborhood mixed use thing is just making my heart leap up. Thank you, really, because I can see walking somewhere and picking up the eggs that I always forget, you know?
Yes.
So,
And one more, Commissioner Copley.
I'll just piggyback on that. We have a food truck Friday in my neighborhood, and it's awesome. Everyone loves it. You meet people in your neighborhood you never would have met. Food trucks show up at the end of the street, and people just get local food and get to know each other. And if this was all over Redmond, it would be amazing.
Thank you again. All right, so we are going to switch to a briefing now on the Redmond 2050 monthly update with Jeff Churchill.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. It's nice to be with you. Last night at the City Council study session, the City Council got very close to finishing their review of the Planning Commission's recommendations for everything that's going to get adopted in 2024. So that's a huge milestone. The two things that are outstanding for future, or the one thing on the issues matrix that's outstanding for future discussion is electric vehicle charging requirements and incentives. So that's something we'll come back to council with sometime in October, TBD. So I want to walk through the adoption schedule and then tell you about some of the things that you didn't review directly that are part of that adoption that were in your memo. So the council will be holding a public hearing on their own on October 15th related to the multifamily tax exemption program. That hearing is required by state statute for the council to hold, so that's why they're hearing it. And that's so that we can expand the residential targeted areas, which is just the nomenclature from the statute that is where you can do MFTE. And it's to align with the work that you did on mandatory inclusionary zoning already for overlake neighborhoods. So that's happening on October 15th. We'll preview the entire package with the council on November 4th of here's everything that will come to you for adoption. And then the adoption is scheduled for November 19th. Along with the comprehensive plan, multiple functional plans, an overlake neighborhood addendum, there will also be several amendments to Redmond Municipal Code chapters and sections that support the work that you've done. And those are, there will be amendments to the impact fee section of the Redmond Municipal Code to address middle housing, and also to partially exempt affordable housing and early learning facilities from transportation impact fees, consistent with the policy language in the plan that you reviewed, and to fully exempt permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, emergency housing, and emergency shelters, which the state all now calls STEP housing, but nobody knows what that means, so that's why I say it out loud, from impact fees. There will be other changes to the multifamily tax exemption program that mirror a lot of what's in the mandatory inclusionary zoning program, but setting up parameters and overlake in the neighborhood zones to support what is in the inclusionary zoning. There will be authority to establish authorize on-street pay parking. That doesn't mean there will be on-street pay parking in January, but it means that the council could decide to do that in the future. And there will be some changes to the capital facility charge section for stormwater for overlake to make sure that infiltration is happening where it needs to as the lot coverage increases in overlake. So while those were not reviewed by the Planning Commission directly, I know some of them were at least mentioned in your meetings, but I want you to understand that that's also happening because it supports the work that you were doing. So turning our attention to 2025 then, you heard a lot about the 2025 code package, and in October, there will be, starting actually tomorrow, September 26th, there will be 8 or 9 virtual sessions for community members to sign up for. The registration links are on the website, which is up on the screen. They've gone out in a newsletter. They're also in your packet. Please feel free to register for one or more of these and come listen to what community members have to say, what questions there are. If 4 or more of you register, we will let you know. And one of you can decide to not attend so that it's not a meeting of the Planning Commission. But please, since we have an RSVP function, we'll know if there's more than 3 of you, and we can work it out with all of you. So you're warmly invited. And that completes my report. Are there any questions?
Doesn't look like it, but congrats on the progress. This is great, especially it's nice to hear what else council is working on that wasn't under our purview. It's good progress.
Yes, and many thanks to the Planning Commission for that.
Yeah. Lovely, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so next up is staff and commissioner updates. We'll start with Becky.
I I am your staff liaison by default tonight because Ian is out on a conference for on housing. However, the only updates we really have are just to talk again about what's coming for the next couple of meetings. As you know, we talked about what's coming next for the mixed-use zones and the other pieces for what we have covered tonight. We're just going to continue. But also at your next meeting is where we're introducing the next package as well. So you'll start to see what we're working on from an incentive standpoint, a little bit more information about the development standard updates, some of the housing updates that Ian is working on that extends it out. And also there's some work that we'll be introducing about green building as well. So those you will introduce at a super high level. Again, we're going to introduce a little bit, then go a little bit deeper and go a little bit deeper as we go through. Anything you want to add?
Yep, I'll add that we have started to work on the 2025 extended agenda. I don't really anticipate that the commission will need to meet on any extra Wednesday nights, like those fifth Wednesdays. Never say never, but it will not be like 2024. Thank you, everybody, for responding to the poll about scheduling the joint meeting with the City Council. It looks like the leading contender is going to be January 28th, and then the backup will be February 25th, so we'll just need to work it out with the clerk's office. And again, the benefit of the January date, if we can get it, is that it's not the night before a planning commission meeting.
Great. Any commissioner updates? No? Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, for that. I look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
I
Then we are adjourned.